The hallway is too quiet for a hospital. Fluorescent lights, a polished floor, the distant squeak of a gurney that stops mid-sound as if someone's hand closed around its throat. A man in a dark suit rounds the corner too fast, an earpiece flashing under his collar, eyes scanning ahead of him instead of at the patient beside him. The patient is elderly, steady only by habit, a navy ball cap pulled low, one hand pressed to his chest like he is trying to hide something that will not stay hidden. A nurse steps out of a supply room pushing a linen cart. Plain scrubs, badge turned slightly inward. Everyone's eyes slide past him. Then the patient's knees fold without warning. The suits surge late, clumsy, reaching for the wrong problem. The nurse is already there, catching the fall, reading the face, the lips, the throat, the seconds. No shout, no panic. He draws his fist back and drives it into the man's chest with a single controlled blow. The sound cracks down the corridor. For a beat, nobody breathes. Then hands go to weapons. And the nurse does not move like a man who made a mistake. He moves like a man who made a decision. Because whatever they think they just witnessed, they are wrong. A hospital at night has its own kind of discipline. Soft shoes, low voices, clipped steps that never become a run unless they have to. Ethan Cole works that rhythm the way some people work prayer. He is not loud, he is not memorable. He keeps his posture neutral, his gaze mostly downward, his hands always busy with something ordinary, a clipboard, a saline bag, a linen cart, so nobody feels watched. The secure wing sits behind two badge-locked doors and a camera that stares without blinking. Most nights, it is an inconvenience for staff and a comfort for administrators. Tonight it feels like a boundary line. There are more suits than usual. Not uniformed security, private detail, trained enough to stand in places that block angles without looking like they are blocking angles. Ethan notices it the way he notices a patient's breathing from across a room, not as a thought, but as a deviation. He rounds a corner and sees a young resident hesitate at the badge reader, rolling his eyes like the door is a personal insult. The resident fumbles, swipes again, finally gets through and mutters something about VIP nonsense. Ethan says nothing. He does not correct him. In a hospital, annoyance is normal. It can cover a lot. At the nurse's station, the charge nurse, Marisol Vega, leans over a printed assignment sheet. "Cole," she says quietly, "you're on the hallway tonight. No floating, no drama." "They want the corridor clear. They always want the corridor clear," Ethan answers. His voice is soft, neutral. No edge. Marisol watches him a second longer than she needs to. She is older than most of the night staff, and sharper than the day shift politics. "You worked military hospitals," she says, not a question, not quite. "A long time ago," he replies. She nods like she is filing it away. "Well, they are treating this like a war zone." "Keep your head down," Ethan does. He checks the crash cart location without making a show of it. He looks at the wall oxygen outlets as he passes them, mentally counting which ones are blocked by storage bins. He glances at the defibrillator on the cart and notes the battery indicator. He does it all while holding a stack of linens like a man who belongs to the background. He passes a room where a patient's TV glows blue in the dark. A family member sleeps in a chair with a blanket pulled up to their chin. Ordinary, fragile. This is why hospitals hate chaos, not because it is loud, but because it arrives without permission. At 02:13, a stretcher arrives at the far end of the hallway. Not the kind that comes from the emergency department with monitors and oxygen tanks and a trail of staff. This one is quiet, almost ceremonial. Two suits guide it like they are moving something expensive. A physician Ethan does not recognize walks at the head, speaking in short phrases to nobody in particular. The patient on the stretcher is upright, not strapped down, wearing a simple gown under a dark overcoat draped across him like an attempt at privacy. Ethan sees the hat first when the man sits up, a navy ball cap. The brim hides the eyes, the posture does not. Even tired, even old, the man holds his shoulders like he once had to. A lifetime of being obeyed leaves marks. Ethan pushes his linen cart into a small alcove, giving them the corridor without being told. The suits do not thank him. They do not look at him. That is fine. Being unseen is sometimes the point. But as the group passes, Ethan catches details the others miss. The way the lead suit keeps his right hand near his jacket, not his belt. The way the physician's mouth is dry, his swallow too frequent. The way the patient's left hand drifts once toward his upper chest, toward the place where a device might sit under skin. It is not dramatic, it is subtle. It is wrong, the doors close behind them. The secure wing settles back into silence. Then, 10 minutes later, a different sound arrives, quick footsteps, not running but close. A suited man appears at the corner, moving with purpose, and behind him the elderly patient is not on a stretcher anymore. He is walking, unsteady. One hand pressed tight to his chest as if he is trying to hold his heart in place. Ethan watches the distance between them, too much space. The suit is scanning ahead, not watching the patient's gait. That is not how a protective detail moves a fragile person unless they are worried about something else. Ethan steps out with his cart, putting himself in the corridor without being in anyone's way. He keeps his face blank. He keeps his hands loose. He looks like a nurse doing a night shift. The patient's breathing changes, shorter, shallower. His jaw tightens. The color drains in a slow wave from his lips. Ethan's mind does not race. It narrows. He sees the knees soften. He moves. The man collapses like a structure whose bolts have been removed one by one. No theatrics, just sudden surrender to gravity. Ethan catches him under the arm and shoulder, guiding him down so the back of his head does not strike the tile. The suits surge forward, mouths open, hands reaching for weapons and radios, but they are still thinking in threats and perimeter. Ethan is thinking in airway and rhythm. He lowers the patient flat. He opens the collar with one swift motion. His fingers find the carotid pulse, nothing steady, a flicker, then absence. The patient's eyes are open but not seeing. Ethan looks at the suits. "Call a code," he says. One suit stares at him like he has spoken out of turn. "Now," Ethan repeats, still calm. "Code blue, crash cart." A second suit keys his radio, voice tight. Overhead, the hospital's announcement system clicks alive, and a calm voice begins to speak a location. A code blue is not a dramatic phrase in a hospital. It is a protocol that pulls a specialized team and equipment to the scene within minutes, because seconds matter when breathing or heartbeat fails. Ethan's eyes go to the corridor. The crash cart is not here. It is farther down, around a corner, past a locked door. He can hear it in his mind, the delay, the wheels. The staff who will arrive too late if the heart is already slipping. He looks down at the patient's chest and sees the faint outline under the skin near the left upper pectoral, an implanted device. A defibrillator, possibly. If it is working, it should be ready to deliver therapy if the rhythm becomes lethal. If it is not working, the body is alone. Ethan listens to the rhythm without equipment, reading the body's signs. The abrupt collapse, the pulselessness, the almost electrical stillness in the face. There is a narrow window in which a single mechanical impulse can sometimes interrupt a malignant arrhythmia when a defibrillator is not immediately available. An old maneuver, rarely used. Not a miracle, but sometimes a bridge. The precordial thump is limited in modern practice, recommended only in very specific circumstances like witnessed. Monitored unstable ventricular tachycardia when defibrillation is not immediately available. It is not for drama, it is for timing. Ethan does not have a monitor. He does not have pads on the chest. He has a hallway, a dying man, and a delay he cannot accept. He draws his fist back, not high, not wild, and strikes the inferior portion of the sternum with the ulnar side of his clenched hand. One blow, controlled. The kind of blow that looks like violence to anyone who does not know what it is. The sound is sharp. It echoes off tile and painted walls. The nearest suit reacts as if Ethan has shot the man. He grabs Ethan's shoulder, yanking him back, and a second suit's jacket opens, weapon visible. "Get off him," the suit barks. Ethan does not fight the hand. He does not argue. He drops to his knees again, eyes on the patient. The chest rises once, shallow. The man's eyelids flutter. Ethan's fingers find the carotid again. A pulse, weak, irregular, but present. Pulse is back, Ethan says, voice even. Airway. Oxygen. A nurse from down the hall arrives with a small oxygen cylinder, eyes wide, staring at Ethan like she does not recognize him. Ethan takes the mask, seals it over the patient's face, and watches the chest rise more reliably. The lead suit's radio crackles with someone demanding status. The suit's gaze stays on Ethan's hands. "You just assaulted him," the suit says, voice low now, dangerous. Ethan looks up. His eyes are tired but steady. "I did not," he says. He lost pulse. "I bought you time. Who are you?" "A nurse," Ethan answers. And it is true in the way most covers are true. It is what the hospital knows him as. Marisol appears at the edge of the crowd, her face changing as she takes in the scene. The Admiral on the floor. The oxygen mask, the suits with weapons half out. Ethan kneeling like a man in prayer beside the body he hit. "What happened?" she demands. "He punched him," one suit says. Ethan does not correct the wording. He keeps working. He checks pupils. He checks skin temperature. He checks for any sign of trauma from the fall. He positions the head to keep the airway open. A respiratory therapist arrives with a bag valve mask, and the code team's footsteps thunder closer. The corridor fills with controlled chaos. The kind hospitals are built to absorb. The Admiral's eyes open again, unfocused. A breath catches in his throat. His hand twitches toward Ethan's wrist as if searching for a railing. Ethan leans closer, speaking so only the patient can hear. "Stay with me," he says, not as comfort, but as instruction. The Admiral's gaze locks on him for half a second, recognition not of a face, but of a bearing. A flicker of something passes through the old man's eyes, and then the rhythm falters again. The monitor arrives with the crash cart. Pads are placed. A nurse calls out the rhythm, and the hallway becomes a small command post. Ethan steps back just enough to let the code leader take the head of the bed. He does not push. He does not claim control. He watches the suits instead, counting them, noting who stands where. And noticing something else, an object near the Admiral's chest that should not be there. A small rectangular badge clip on the floor, black. Heavy, too clean to be hospital plastic. Ethan's gaze stays on it only a beat, but his mind marks it as a weapon without a blade. The lead suit leans down, snatches it up, and shoves it into his pocket like evidence. Ethan says nothing, not yet. The code team works with practiced efficiency, compressions ready, airway equipment laid out, medication drawn up. The Admiral's rhythm stabilizes enough that defibrillation is not delivered in that moment, but the entire corridor carries the tension of a heart that might fail again at any second. Ethan stands close but not in the way, hands clean, ready, watching the patient's skin tone, and the monitor's numbers like they are a language he learned before he learned this hospital's hallway. The suits do not relax. If anything, they tighten. Their posture is no longer just protection around a VIP, it is containment around a perceived attacker. One of them speaks into a phone, voice clipped, eyes never leaving Ethan's face. A hospital security officer arrives, uniformed, confused, trying to understand why armed men are in his corridor. The lead suit flashes credentials too fast for the officer to read and points at Ethan. "That one," he says. "Detain him." Marisol steps forward, jaw set. "He is staff," she says. "He initiated life-saving intervention." "You saw him hit the Admiral," the suit replies. "You want to argue with me in the hallway or in a federal report?" The word federal lands like a weight. Ethan could resist. He could twist out of the security officer's grip. The officer is not trained for him. Ethan knows that the way he knows IV placement by touch. But resistance becomes a different story. A story that gives the suit's legal cover to remove him from the scene, to isolate him, to lose the minutes he needs. So Ethan lets the security officer take his arm. He keeps his voice low. "Do not pull me away from the patient," he says to Marisol, not pleading, directing. "He may crash again, his device may not be working." Marisol blinks. His device. Ethan's gaze flicks to the Admiral's left upper chest. "Implant," he says. "Ask cardiology if it fired." The suit hears enough to interrupt. "You do not get to give orders." Ethan looks at him. "I am not giving orders," he says. "I am naming risk." The code leader calls for transport to ICU. The hallway becomes motion again, gurney, oxygen, lines secured. The Admiral is lifted carefully, like a man whose body now belongs to protocol. Ethan is guided along beside the moving gurney, the security officer still gripping him. It is a compromise that keeps Ethan near enough to see and hear. As they approach the ICU doors, Ethan spots the lead suit again. The man's right hand keeps dipping into his jacket pocket, thumb pressing something through fabric. Like he is reassuring himself that a weapon is still there. Ethan's mind returns to the black badge clip he saw on the floor. Not hospital plastic, heavy, rectangular, a magnet. The thought is not cinematic, it is clinical. Magnets can interfere with implanted cardiac devices. in implantable cardioverter defibrillators. Strong magnets can inhibit the device's ability to deliver life-saving shocks while the magnet is close. If someone placed a magnet over the Admiral's ICD, disguised as a visitor badge clip, a name tag, a keep-out accessory, the device could be silenced without anyone seeing a syringe or a blade. Ethan watches the suit's pocket again. The hand presses, then withdraws. The ICU charge nurse stops them at the door, looking at the armed men. "Weapons outside," she says, firm. The lead suit's face hardens. "Not negotiable." The ICU charge nurse does not back down. "This is not your ship." Ethan hears the phrase and feels the subtle irony of it settle in his chest. He is still being held by hospital security like a nuisance. The people with guns are arguing about policy while the Admiral's heart is one mistake away from stopping. Ethan speaks, quiet enough that it does not sound like a challenge. "If you bring that magnet near him again, he will die," he says to the lead suit. The suit's eyes narrow. "What did you just say?" Ethan keeps his expression neutral. "The thing you picked up," he says. "The black clip, you put it in your pocket. I picked up evidence. You picked up a magnet," Ethan replies. "And you are standing close to a man with an implanted defibrillator." The suit's hand freezes halfway to his jacket. For a second, nobody moves. The ICU doors are open. The Admiral's monitor beeps steadily, but the sound now feels thin, like a promise the hospital cannot guarantee. Marisol steps in, voice tight. "Is that true?" Ethan does not look at her. He watches the suit. "Do not test it," he says. The suit slowly pulls the black clip from his pocket and holds it in his palm. It looks innocent, a sleek badge accessory, the kind expensive people buy to look important. Ethan points, not touching. "Keep it away," he says. The suit's jaw works. His pride wants to deny it. His training wants to listen. He steps back 2 paces and hands it to another suit, who moves it down the hall as if it might explode. The ICU doors close. The Admiral disappears into controlled light. And then, because the hospital and the detail both need someone to blame, Ethan feels the security officer's grip tightens. "Sir," the officer says. "Uncertain now. They still want you in an interview room." Ethan nods once. "I will go," he says, "but you keep me on this floor." "Why?" Ethan's gaze stays on the ICU doors. "Because it is not over," he says. He lets them walk him away. He does not look back, but he listens. He listens for the wrong footsteps. The interview room is small and overlit. The kind of room designed to make people feel guilty before they speak. Ethan sits with his hands on the table, wrists uncuffed but watched. Hospital security stands at the door. A suited investigator arrives, different from the protective detail, sharper, with a badge Ethan recognizes even before it is shown. "Ethan Cole," the investigator says, reading from a thin file. "Registered nurse, employed here 18 months. Prior service, Navy, no criminal record." Ethan says nothing. The investigator places a phone on the table, screen facing up. "You struck Admiral Harlan Keene in the chest in a public corridor. I performed an intervention," Ethan replies. "You did not have a monitor. I did not have a defibrillator," Ethan says. Still calm, the investigator studies him. "You are remarkably composed." Ethan's eyes do not shift. "I work in a hospital." The investigator leans forward slightly. "You work in a hospital where someone just tried to kill an admiral." The sentence lands without flourish. Ethan keeps his face neutral. "Did the Admiral's implanted device fire?" he asks. The investigator pauses. "It did not." Ethan nods once, like a man checking a box. The investigator continues. "A magnet was recovered. Protective detail says you identified it. It was close to his implant," Ethan says. "It should not have been. Do you know who brought it in?" Ethan's mind runs through the corridor again. The ceremonial stretcher, the physician's dry mouth, the badge reader delays, the suit scanning ahead instead of watching the patient. The threat is not outside the hospital. It is inside the process. "I do not know," he says. "But someone wanted his ICD silent." The investigator watches him. "You speak like you have dealt with this." Ethan's expression does not change. "I have dealt with patients dying," he says. The investigator's phone vibrates. He glances at it, then stands. "You are suspended pending review," he says. "You are not to return to the secure wing." Ethan looks up. "If you keep me away, you will be blind," he says, the first sentence that carries weight beyond hospital talk. The investigator's eyes narrow. Excuse me? Ethan chooses each word carefully because the wrong word becomes exposure. Whoever brought the magnet can come back, he says. They already know the routes. They already tested the timing. The Admiral is not safe because he is in ICU. ICU is just another room. The investigator hesitates. Not because he believes Ethan, but because the calm certainty is hard to dismiss. Still, procedure wins. The investigator nods to hospital security. Escort him out, he says. Ethan stands without resistance. Restraint is not weakness, it is control. He lets them walk him toward an exit corridor, but as they pass a service hallway, Ethan's eyes catch a detail that makes his stomach tighten. A transport tech pushes a covered cart, linen or waste. Indistinct under a tarp. Beside the cart, a man in scrubs walks with his head slightly down, moving like he belongs, but his shoes are wrong. Too new, too clean. And his ID badge is turned inward like Ethan's, except Ethan does it to be unseen. This man does it to hide the photo. Ethan slows half a step. The man in scrubs does not look at him. He keeps walking. Ethan feels the moment where two strangers acknowledge each other without eye contact. Recognition of threat. Ethan's escort keeps moving. The man in scrubs turns a corner and disappears toward ICU service access. Ethan stops. Keep walking. Hospital security orders. Ethan looks at the officer holding him. His voice stays low. If you keep escorting me, the Admiral dies, he says. No drama, just probability. The officer's face tightens. He does not want to be in the story that ends with an Admiral dead. Ethan makes a decision that costs him. He raises his voice, not shouting, just loud enough to carry. Fire alarm protocol, he says to nobody in particular. Service corridor breach, lock ICU service doors. Marisol's voice answers from down the hall. What are you doing, Cole? Ethan does not explain. Explanations are slow. He steps toward the service corridor and the security officer grabs him again, now angry. Ethan does not fight him. He does something smaller and harsher. He lets the officer pull him down the hall while Ethan keeps his eyes on the corner where the scrubbed man disappeared. And he calls out one phrase with the tone of someone who expects to be obeyed. Close that door, he says to a housekeeping supervisor near a fire panel. The supervisor flinches at the command tone and slaps the door release button without thinking. The service corridor door clicks and locks. A beat later, a muted thud hits from the other side. Someone testing it, realizing the access is gone. Ethan's pulse stays steady. He has bought seconds. The protective detail appears at the far end of the hallway, moving fast now, guns still holstered but hands ready. The lead suit sees Ethan being dragged and makes a snap judgment that Ethan reads instantly. They will treat him as the problem again. Because it is easier, Ethan meets the lead suit's eyes and speaks quietly, almost politely. He is in scrubs, Ethan says. He has a covered cart. He is trying to reach ICU through service access. The lead suit's mouth tightens. How do you know? Ethan does not answer that. He gives something actionable. His shoes, Ethan says, and he is hiding his badge. The lead suit hesitates, then signals his team. Two suits peel off toward the service corridor, moving with controlled speed. Ethan feels the security officer's grip loosen. The officer's authority is crumbling under the weight of a bigger one entering the hallway. Marisol arrives, breathless, eyes locked on Ethan. They are going to ruin you, she says quietly. Assault. Suspended, you could lose everything. Ethan looks at her for the first time with something like fatigue. If I leave, he says, he dies. Marisol's eyes flick to the ICU doors. Why do you care? Ethan's answer is simple, and it cost him to say even that much. Because he is my patient, he says. Then an alarm begins, not the fire alarm, but the sharper, more urgent tone of an ICU alert escalating. Staff move faster. The protective detail's radios crackle. Somewhere behind the locked service door, someone is adjusting their plan. The crisis does not change. It tightens. Ethan turns back to the corridor and makes another choice. He steps into the center of the hall where cameras can see him clearly. Where every witness can later point and say he was there. He becomes visible on purpose, if the story needs a villain to keep the Admiral alive. Ethan will carry it. The ICU doors open and shut in frantic cycles. Nurses moving in, supplies moving out. The rhythm of a unit responding to a threat that is both medical and human. The protective detail forms a perimeter. But their perimeter is designed for bullets and bombs, not for magnets and syringes and altered medication labels. Ethan stands at the edge of it, held by nobody now, but still blocked by authority and anger. He watches the hands that touch the doors, the faces that pass through, the carts that roll by. He does not need to see a weapon. He needs to see intent. A nurse exits ICU with a small bag of medication waste. Her hands are shaking. Ethan catches her eye and she looks away too fast. He steps toward her, stopping at a respectful distance. "What happened?" he asks. Her voice is thin. "He went into a bad rhythm again," she says. "They said his device still did not fire." Ethan nods. "Did anyone bring personal items close to his chest?" he asks, careful. The nurse hesitates, then whispers. One of the suits leaned over him. He had something clipped to his jacket. The monitor changed right after. Ethan's gaze shifts to the lead suit. The man is standing rigid, jaw clenched, but his hand keeps returning to his jacket like a habit. The magnet. Ethan feels a cold anger, controlled, precise. It does not matter whether the lead suit is careless or compromised. The effect is the same. The Admiral's device is being neutralized by proximity. Ethan walks toward the lead suit without permission. Two suits step into his path. "Back off," one says. Ethan's voice stays calm. "Move," he says, not loud. Certain, the suits glance at each other. Caught between orders and the odd fact that the nurse who assaulted, their Admiral now speaks like a man who has given orders before. The lead suit steps forward. "You do not get near him again." Ethan looks at the man's jacket. "You still have it," Ethan says. The lead suit's eyes harden. "I secured it." "You secured a threat," Ethan replies. "Magnets can inhibit implanted defibrillators while they are close. Keep it away from his chest." The lead suit's mouth tightens. Pride again. Denial again. And behind him, inside ICU, the Admiral's monitor alarms climb in urgency. Ethan does not argue anymore. He reaches into his own scrub pocket and pulls out a small hospital-issued specimen bag, clear plastic, the kind used for lab samples. He holds it open. "Give it," Ethan says. The lead suit stares. "Who are you to?" Ethan cuts him off with the smallest possible escalation, a name spoken like a password. "Keen knows me," Ethan says. "If he lives long enough to speak, ask him." That is not a reveal. It is a lever. The lead suit hesitates, then pulls the magnet clip from his jacket and drops it into the bag. Ethan seals it and hands it to Marisol without looking away from the ICU doors. "Put it in a metal cabinet," Ethan says. Far from patience, Marisol takes it with both hands like it is radioactive. The ICU doors open. A cardiologist appears, face tight. "We cannot keep him stable," she says. "It is like the device is not there." Ethan steps forward. "It is there," he says. "It is being silenced." The cardiologist blinks. "By what?" Ethan does not point at people, he points at systems. "Anything with a strong magnet near the implant," he says. "Badges, clips, electronics, keep the chest clear." Check every person who leans over him. The cardiologist's eyes narrow at the suits. The suits bristle. The final attempt arrives not as a masked gunman, but as process. A covered cart rolls up again, pushed by a man in scrubs whose badge is still turned inward. He approaches the ICU service entrance from the other side now, using a different corridor. He moves with confidence because he believes the hospital's own camouflage will protect him. Ethan sees him first. He steps into the man's path. Not aggressively, simply standing where the cart must stop. The man in scrubs looks up, eyes flat. "Move," he says. Ethan does not move. "Show your badge," Ethan replies. The man's jaw tightens. His hand shifts under the tarp, searching for something. Ethan's voice stays soft. "Do not," he says. The man's hand emerges with a syringe. It is not cinematic. It is ugly and small and final. The suits behind Ethan draw weapons. The hallway freezes again in that terrible half-second where a decision will define the rest of everyone's life. Ethan does not lunge. He does not grab the syringe like a hero in a movie. He does something disciplined. He steps one pace to the side, forcing the man's line of movement to angle away from the ICU doors, away from patients and staff. He keeps himself between the syringe and the only place the attacker wants to go. The attacker's eyes flick toward ICU. He tries to push the cart around. Ethan plants a hand on the cart frame and locks his elbow, not strength, leverage. The cart stops. The attacker's face changes. He realizes he is not dealing with a startled nurse. He tries to jab the syringe into Ethan's arm. Ethan rotates his forearm inward just enough to redirect the needle into the tarp, not flesh. The movement is minimal, no flourish, no wasted force. Ethan's other hand comes up and traps the attacker's wrist against the cart frame. A suit shouts, "Down!" The attacker panics. He jerks, trying to break free. Ethan's mind stays cold. If the syringe contains something lethal, it cannot break and aerosolize near staff. If the attacker falls wrong, the needle can puncture anyone. Ethan holds him steady, controlling the chaos rather than adding to it. "Drop it," Ethan says, voice quiet. The attacker's breathing becomes ragged, his eyes dart. He is looking for escape routes that do not exist. Ethan applies pressure at the wrist and thumb, pain compliance, precise, not sadistic. The syringe slips from the attacker's grip and clatters to the floor. The suits swarm in and take the attacker down. Guns remain pointed, but nobody fires. Ethan keeps his hands visible, stepping back immediately, offering no threat. A hospital pharmacist appears behind the chaos, eyes fixed on the syringe. Already thinking about chain of custody and contamination. Marisol stands beside Ethan, shaking now, anger and fear mixing in her face. The investigator from earlier arrives, breathless, eyes wide as he sees the attacker in cuffs. He looks at Ethan as if seeing him for the first time. "What is in that syringe?" someone asks. Ethan answers without looking at it. "Does not matter yet," he says. What matters is he did not reach the Admiral. Inside ICU, the alarms soften. A steadier beep returns, still fragile but present. The cardiologist reappears, hair disheveled, face pale. "He stabilized when the magnet was removed," she says, voice strained with disbelief. "His device is functioning." Ethan nods as if that outcome was always the plan. The lead suit steps toward Ethan, face hard, pride broken into something quieter. "You saved him," he says. Ethan looks at the man with no satisfaction. "I kept him alive," he replies. "There is a difference." The Admiral survives the night, but survival does not clean the hallway. Reports begin immediately. Statements are taken. Ethan is asked the same question again and again. "Who are you? Why did you know? Why did you act like that? Why did you not panic?" He gives them almost nothing. At dawn, when the hospital's windows begin to pale and the night shift's tension loosens into exhaustion, the ICU doors open one more time. The Admiral is awake enough to speak, voice rough, eyes still sharp. He looks directly at Ethan for a moment. The hallway holds its breath again. "You hit me," the Admiral says. Ethan's face remains neutral. "Yes, sir." The Admiral's gaze flicks to the suits, then back. "They told me you assaulted me," he says. Ethan does not defend himself. He does not plead. "I did what I had to," he says. The Admiral studies him like a man reading a file he wrote years ago. Then he speaks one sentence, quietly, without ceremony, and it lands like a rank insignia placed on a table. "Stand down," the Admiral tells the suits. "That is my man." The lead suit's posture changes instantly, subtle, almost involuntary. The others shift with him. In that small movement, the reversal happens without being announced. The investigator blinks. "Admiral, do you know?" "I know enough." The Admiral cuts in, voice still weak but absolute. "You will remove the assault language from your preliminary report." Silence. Ethan feels the weight of the moment and refuses it. He does not step forward. He does not accept gratitude. He does not let the hallway turn him into a symbol. Marisol watches him, eyes wet, voice barely audible. "Who are you?" she asks. Ethan looks at her, tired now. "A nurse," he says again. She shakes her head, almost angry. "No." Ethan's voice softens by a degree. "I am what the hospital needed tonight," he says. "Tomorrow it will need me to disappear." The Admiral's eyes hold his. There is recognition there and something like regret. "You will not be punished," the Admiral says. Ethan does not argue. He simply nods once, respectful. 2 hours later, Ethan walks back into the supply room where the story began. He washes his hands for the full count, slow and thorough, letting the hot water run over skin that still remembers the cart frame, the needle's cold proximity. The decision to accept blame so he could stay close. He dries his hands. He straightens his badge, turns slightly inward again. When he steps out, day shift is arriving, faces bright with sleep and coffee. Unaware of how close the hospital came to becoming a headline, Ethan pushes a linen cart down the corridor like any other nurse. No spotlight. No applause, just the quiet, heavy continuation of work.